There is a brutal truth about breakups that almost nobody tells you early enough. The ex you cannot stop thinking about is not always the one meant for you. And the ex who comes back usually does not come back because you chased harder, cried louder, or loved deeper. They often come back when they realize your entire world no longer revolves around them. That is the part most people miss. Because after a breakup, the pain is not just emotional, it is psychological, it is physical. It gets into your nervous system, it gets into your identity, it gets into the way you wake up in the morning and the way you try to survive the silence at night. And that is why so many people make the same mistake. They think the solution is to reach again, to explain again, to love harder, to prove their value one more time. And to send that final text that they hope will suddenly make everything click. But what if the very thing you are doing to bring them back is the exact thing pushing them further away? And what if the one shift that makes an ex look back is not a trick, not a game, not some manipulative dating strategy, but the moment you stop abandoning yourself for someone who already walked away? Because psychologically, that is where everything changes. The first thing you need to understand is this. After a breakup, you are not just grieving a person. You are grieving familiarity. You are grieving routine. You are grieving emotional certainty. You are grieving the version of you that existed when someone was there every day. That is why breakups feel so disorienting. You are not only asking, why did they leave? You are also silently asking, now who am I now without this relationship? Why does everything feel so empty? How can they be okay when I feel like I am falling apart? Why do I still want someone who clearly chose distance? And when your mind cannot tolerate the emptiness, it starts searching for relief. That is when you check your phone again. That is when you reread old messages. That is when you stare at their social media like it contains answers it will never give you. That is when you tell yourself, maybe if I just say this one thing the right way, maybe they will finally understand. But here is what is actually happening. Your brain is not simply craving them. Your brain is craving regulation. The attachment bond has been broken, and your nervous system is panicking. It is treating the loss like danger. That is why your chest feels tight. Your thoughts race. Your sleep is ruined, and every hour of silence feels heavier than it should. So, when you reach for your ex, many times it is not even because you have something meaningful left to say. It is because your body is screaming for relief. And that is where people get confused. They call it love. But sometimes it is not love leading. Sometimes it is emotional withdrawal. That matters because if you do not understand the difference, you will keep mistaking panic for connection. And panic never creates attraction. This is why chasing almost always backfires. Most people think that if their love is genuine enough, it should be felt. So they send long paragraphs. They explain their pain. They ask for clarity. They ask if there is still a chance. They try to make the other person see how much they are hurting. And from the inside, it feels honest. It feels vulnerable. It feels real. But from the other side, it often feels like pressure. That is the hard truth. You may believe you are expressing love, but what the other person often feels is responsibility. Responsibility for your sadness, responsibility for your collapse, responsibility for your hope, responsibility for your healing. And once someone starts feeling like they are now responsible for stabilizing your emotions, they usually do not move closer. They step back. Not always because they are cruel, not always because they never cared, but because human beings naturally retreat from places where they feel trapped, guilty, or emotionally overwhelmed. This is one of the most important truths in relationship psychology. No one wants to be loved in a way that feels like they are carrying your entire emotional survival. That does not pull them in. It makes them feel heavier around you. And attraction cannot breathe under pressure. So when people say, but I just wanted them to know how much I love them, I understand that. But love delivered through panic does not land as love. It lands as urgency. It lands as emotional demand. It lands as a weight the other person does not know how to hold. And that is exactly why, the more desperately you try to be seen, the less magnetic you become. What really makes someone miss you is not your constant presence. It is your meaningful absence. This is the part people resist, because it hurts. After a breakup, many people stay emotionally available in a half-open, half-closed kind of way. They are not together anymore, but they still respond fast. They still watch every story. They still react to posts. They still answer late-night messages. They still let the other person feel that emotional access is available. In other words, the relationship is gone, but the emotional benefits are still there. And psychologically, that teaches your ex something dangerous. They can lose the relationship without truly losing you. Think about that. If they can still feel your attention, your softness, your care, your emotional energy whenever they want it, then their nervous system never has to fully process your absence. And if they never fully process your absence, they never fully feel the loss. Without loss, there is no space. Without space, there is no reflection. Without reflection, there is no mature longing. People do not deeply feel the value of something when it remains constantly available after they walked away from it. They feel it when it is no longer sitting there waiting. Now, let me be clear. This is not about playing games. This is not about posting fake happiness to make them jealous. This is not about using silence as manipulation. This is about dignity. This is about refusing to keep giving emotional access to someone who is no longer clearly choosing you. That is not cold-hearted. That is emotionally mature, because love without boundaries becomes self-abandonment. And nothing kills your inner power faster than staying permanently available to someone who made themselves unavailable to you. And the biggest shift happens when you stop trying to get them back and start coming back to yourself. This is where healing becomes attractive, not performative healing, not the kind where you glow up just to make them regret you, not the kind where every gym photo, every quote, every silence is secretly still about them. I mean real healing, the kind where you rebuild your life in a way that does not depend on whether they return. That is the shift that changes your entire energy. Because as long as every improvement is secretly designed to be seen by them, you are still orbiting them. You are still building your life around their gaze. You are still asking, even in silence, do you see me now? Do I matter now? Am I enough now? That is not freedom. Real healing looks different. It looks like returning to your body, returning to your sleep, returning to your work, returning to your routines, returning to your friendships, returning to your self-respect, returning to the parts of yourself that had nothing to do with them in the first place. Because after a breakup, many people do not just lose love, they lose identity. They do not know who they are without the role they used to play. They do not know what their days mean without someone to text. They do not know how to sit in silence without feeling abandoned. So they cling not only to the person, but to the version of self they were inside that relationship. But something profound happens when you start building again. You stop giving off the energy of, please come back so I can feel whole. And you start giving off the energy of, I am hurting. Oh, but I am no longer willing to leave myself behind just because you left. That is powerful. That is rare. And people feel that difference even when you never say a word. Emotional stability is more attractive than intensity. A lot of people think attraction is about passion, chemistry, and emotional highs. But what keeps people drawn to you over time is often much deeper than intensity. It is emotional steadiness. Because after a breakup, when your ex sends a random message, or likes something, or gives one tiny breadcrumb, the unhealed version of you sees that small signal and turns it into a giant possibility. You overread it. You overinvest in it. You rush emotionally toward it. You start fantasizing again. You hand your nervous system over to hope. Why? Because you are starving. Not for them necessarily, but for relief. And when you are emotionally starving, even crumbs feel like a feast. But the version of you that is healing responds differently. That version pauses. That version notices the rush in the body. That version feels the excitement, the fear, the hope, the ache, and does not immediately act on it. That version understands that one message is not commitment, one signal is not clarity, and one moment of contact is not proof of real change. That kind of emotional regulation is magnetic, because a person who is no longer controlled by panic feels safe, and safety is deeply attractive. Far more attractive than emotional chaos packaged as passion. A calm nervous system carries a kind of quiet power that desperate energy never can. And silence is where truth begins. Most people are terrified of silence after a breakup, because silence feels like rejection made permanent. No text, no explanation, no closure, no reassurance, just emptiness. And the instinct is to fill it immediately, to send something, to ask something, to reopen the emotional door, to soften the quiet, because the quiet feels unbearable. But silence has a psychological function. It reveals reality. As long as you keep showing up, keep explaining, keep reaching, keep reminding them of your value, they never have to sit alone with what your absence actually means. They are just responding to your continued presence. But when you step back with dignity, silence begins doing the work that words cannot do. It creates contrast. It creates space. It creates the kind of emptiness that forces reflection. And that is when the real questions begin inside them. Was life actually better without this person? Why do things feel strangely empty now? Did I take their presence for granted? Was I sure, or was I just overwhelmed? Why does their absence feel louder than I expected? Now, be very clear about this. Silence does not guarantee they will come back. And if anyone tells you it does, they are selling fantasy. But silence gives truth a chance to surface, and constant contact does not. The deepest wound after a breakup is often not losing them, but feeling unchosen. This is where it gets really painful. Because underneath all the missing, all the longing, all the replaying of memories, there is often one raw, unspoken wound. I was not enough to be chosen. That is the sentence people carry in silence. Yes, and once that wound takes over, you start trying to earn love back. You think maybe you need to be softer, maybe less emotional, maybe prettier, maybe more understanding, maybe more patient, maybe more successful, maybe easier to love, maybe less needy, maybe more perfect. So everything becomes a quiet performance of worthiness. But hear me clearly. A healthy relationship is not built on you constantly auditioning for love. The right connection does not require you to abandon your center just to remain wanted. The moment you place your entire value in another person's ability to choose you, you lose your emotional ground. And this is why so many people feel shattered after being left. It is not just heartbreak, it is identity collapse. Because if your worth depended on being chosen, and then rejection feels like proof that something must be wrong with you. But it is not proof. It is pain. It is loss. It is grief. But it is not proof of your inadequacy. Emotional maturity begins when you can finally say, if we ever find our way back to each other, it has to come from truth, clarity, and willingness on both sides. I will not drag someone into loving me. That sentence changes everything, because that is the moment self-respect returns. The irony is this. When you no longer need them back to feel valuable, that is often when they feel you most. Why? Because neediness creates pressure, but wholeness creates presence. When you still want them, but no longer need them to rescue your identity, your energy changes. There is no more grasping, no more silent begging, no more emotional collapse disguised as romance, and no more trying to prove that your love is worth coming back to. Instead, there is groundedness. There is pain, yes. There is grief, yes. There is still love, maybe. But there is also self-possession, and that combination is unforgettable. Not because you are acting detached, not because you are using some cold strategy, but because you are no longer leaking desperation. People often look back when they feel the absence of something they thought would always remain available. But what truly hits them is not just that you disappeared, it is that you stopped centering your life around them. You stopped treating them like the source of your worth. You stopped making them the emotional sun your whole world revolved around. And in that moment, they are no longer dealing with the broken version of you who was begging to be chosen. They are faced with someone whole, someone deeper, someone steadier, someone who has clearly suffered, but did not let suffering destroy their core. That is the version people remember. That is the version people feel. That is the version that often becomes impossible to forget. So what actually makes an ex come back? Not over-explaining, not chasing, not convincing, not emotional flooding, not proving your love one more time. What brings an ex back more than anything else is this: the moment they can no longer feel that your life depends on them. Because when that pressure leaves, they finally get to experience you differently. Not as someone pulling at them, not as someone collapsing around them, not as someone trying to force clarity, but as someone who has become emotionally whole enough to let reality speak for itself. And sometimes that is exactly what makes them turn around. Not because you manipulated them, but because your absence became real, your energy became clean, and your value stopped asking for permission to exist. Conclusion: if you are heartbroken right now, do not shame yourself for still loving them. Do not shame yourself for missing them. Do not shame yourself for checking your phone too much. Do not shame yourself for having moments where you want to text them so badly it feels physical. You are not weak. You are grieving, and grief makes human beings do deeply human things. But healing begins when you understand this. You do not get your power back by learning how to chase more beautifully. You get your power back by refusing to abandon yourself again. That is the real shift. And sometimes, the exact moment you stop trying to pull them back is the exact moment you start returning to yourself. And if they come back, they will not find the same person they left. They will meet someone calmer, deeper, stronger, more grounded, more whole. And if they do not come back, then your healing was still not wasted, because at least this time, in the middle of heartbreak, you did not lose yourself too. And in the end, that may be the most attractive thing about any human being, not how deeply they can love, but but how fully they can remain connected to themselves, even in love, even in loss, even after being left behind.